What if the life you thought was perfect was nothing more than an illusion? And what if the ones you trusted most were the very people sharpening the knife behind your back? This is the story of love, betrayal, and a revenge so deep that it would shake the foundations of everything. The story begins in a quiet town where Ayan and Mira lived with their 7-year-old daughter Sia. To outsiders, they were the definition of a perfect family. He was a hard-working architect, and she was a devoted wife who managed the household with grace. Their little daughter Sia was the heart of their home, filling every corner with laughter, innocence, and endless questions about the world. Ayan often thought he had been blessed beyond measure. Each evening when he returned home, Sia would run to the door, wrapping her tiny arms around his legs, while Mira smiled from the kitchen, her hands busy preparing dinner. It was a rhythm, a comfort, a life that looked unshakable. But perfection is often a mask. And beneath the mask of smiles, something darker had begun to stir. Sia adored her parents equally, but she had a special bond with her father. She loved listening to his bedtime stories, tales of heroes, journeys, and courage. Mira, on the other hand, was quieter with her daughter, often distracted, often distant. At first, Ayan dismissed it as exhaustion or stress. But little signs began to appear. Unexplained late-night phone calls, sudden outings, moments where her eyes seemed to hide secrets. One night, while Mira was showering, her phone buzzed on the table. Ayan had never been the kind of man to invade privacy, but something about the constant buzzing gnawed at his instincts. He glanced at the screen. A single name lit up. Arjun. He didn't open the phone. He simply stared at it, his chest tightening, his mind clouding with doubts he didn't want to entertain. Arjun wasn't a name he had ever heard her mention before. But the call log that followed, again and again, every night around the same time, told him enough to know that something wasn't right. That night, Ayan lay beside Mira, listening to the rhythm of her breath as she slept. He stared at the ceiling, Sia's soft breathing from the next room a reminder of what was at stake. The thought of betrayal clawed at him, but he said nothing. Not yet. Days turned into weeks, and the cracks in the illusion widened. Ayan started noticing how Mira dressed more carefully when she went shopping, how she seemed more alive, more glowing, but not for him. Sia, innocent and oblivious, continued to smile and play, asking when they would go on their promised family trip to the mountains. That trip never came. Instead, one evening when Ayan returned home earlier than usual, he found the house strangely quiet. Sia was asleep on the couch, a book half fallen from her hand. Mira was nowhere in sight. His heart pounded as he walked to the balcony. And there she was, laughing, her face lit with an expression he hadn't seen in months. She was on the phone. With him. With Arjun. Her words were soft, but each one cut through him like glass. I can't wait to be with you. Soon, everything will fall into place. Ayan froze. His world, the life he had built, the trust he had given, shattered in an instant. He walked away quietly, back into the living room, staring at Sia's peaceful face. His daughter. His responsibility. His love. He realized then that everything had changed. This wasn't just betrayal. This was war. But revenge, he knew, could not be rushed. Not when a child's future was tied to every decision he made. He would have to play it carefully, patiently, like a hunter stalking prey in the shadows. And so, Ayan made a silent promise to himself that night. He would uncover the full truth, he would protect his daughter, and he would make Mira and Arjun regret the day they ever thought they could destroy him. What they didn't know was that Ayan was not just a man of emotions. He was also a man of strategy, and once his heart turned cold, there was no turning back. As dawn broke the next morning, the perfect illusion of their family remained intact to the outside world. Neighbors still smiled at them, friends still envied them, and Sia still saw her parents as the perfect couple. But inside Ayan's heart, A storm had begun to brew. And this storm would one day wash away every false smile, every hidden secret, every betrayal. The game of revenge had just begun. If betrayal feels like fire, then discovery feels like gasoline. Ion had only seen the surface, but what he would uncover next would set his soul ablaze. And once the truth is out, there's no going back. When a heart breaks, it doesn't shatter all at once. It cracks slowly, piece by piece, until nothing is left but sharp edges. Ion thought he had already felt the worst of betrayal, but the truth he was about to uncover would cut even deeper. Ion's life became a theater of lies. Every morning, he played the role of the loving husband, the caring father, the man who had no reason to suspect anything. To the world, nothing had changed. But inside, every moment was a storm raging against the calm mask he wore. He became more observant, sharper. Every detail mattered now. Mira's sudden excuses, the way she guarded her phone, the way her eyes darted when he asked simple questions. The trust they once shared had become a battlefield of silence. Sia remained blissfully unaware. Her laughter still echoed through the house, her drawings still filled the fridge with bright colors, her dreams still revolved around small joys. Family picnics, bedtime stories, her father's warm hugs. She was Ion's anchor, the only reason he hadn't confronted Mira outright. For Sia, he would endure the facade, at least for now. But truth has a way of surfacing when you least expect it. One evening, Ion returned home earlier than planned. Mira wasn't there. He checked the kitchen empty. The bedroom untouched. The balcony quiet. Only Sia was there, sitting cross-legged on the floor, drawing a picture of a house with 3 stick figures holding hands. "Where's Mama?" Ion asked softly. Sia looked up with innocent eyes. "Mama went to the market. But she didn't take any bags." Ion's chest tightened. No bags. No groceries. Just another excuse. He kissed Sia's head and tucked her into bed early, telling her he'd be back soon. Then, for the first time, he followed Mira. The city streets were alive with neon signs and honking cars, but Ion's focus was razor-sharp. He kept a safe distance, his car blending into the night as Mira's cab stopped outside a hotel. Not a restaurant, not a cafe, a hotel. She stepped out, dressed in a way she never dressed for him anymore. Her face glowed not with guilt, but with excitement. She walked quickly, as though she had been here many times before. And then Ion saw him. Arjun. Tall, confident, younger. He greeted Mira with an embrace far too intimate to be casual. She melted into his arms as though she belonged there. Ion gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. His breath came heavy, but he forced himself not to act, not to scream, not to lose control. He stayed in the shadows, watching as the woman he loved and trusted vanished into the hotel with another man. That night Ion didn't sleep. Instead, he sat by Sia's bedside, watching her chest rise and fall with every innocent breath. His mind spun with questions. Why? How long? Was it all a lie? But beneath the pain, something colder took root. Clarity. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about justice. About reclaiming what was his. About protecting Sia from the poison of lies. The next morning, Mira returned as if nothing had happened. She smiled faintly, kissed Sia on the forehead, and pretended to be tired from shopping. Ion played along, his face unreadable, his heart silent. But inside, his mind was already moving like a chessboard. Step 1. Gather evidence. Step 2. Find their weakness. Step 3. Strike where it hurts the most. He began small. Checking phone bills, tracing receipts, noting down her absences. Every clue built a clearer picture of her betrayal. And every piece of evidence was carefully hidden away, locked in a folder that Mira would never find. But as he gathered proof, Ion also discovered something far worse. This wasn't just an affair. It was a plan. Conversations hinted at money, at accounts being drained, at a future where Ayan had no place. Mira and Arjun weren't simply betraying his love, they were plotting to take everything he had worked for. His home, his savings, even custody of Sia. The betrayal was complete. One evening, as Mira tucked Sia into bed, Ayan stood quietly at the door watching. His wife kissed their daughter, whispering words of love, the same lips that whispered promises to another man. It was in that moment that Ayan realized something chilling. Mira didn't see this as betrayal at all. To her, it was just a transition, a shift from one life to another, with no thought of the damage she was leaving behind. And that was her mistake. Because Ayan was not a man who would go quietly. That night, while Mira slept, Ayan sat at his desk, staring at the evidence he had collected. Every photo, every receipt, every recorded call was a weapon. A war chest of truth. And in the quiet of the night, he made another silent vow. He would not only protect Sia, but he would destroy the illusion Mira and Arjun had built. The storm inside him had found its purpose. Betrayal is painful, but betrayal with a plan. That's war. As Ayan uncovered the full depth of Mira's lies, he realized he wasn't just fighting for revenge. He was fighting for survival. And the next move would change everything. What if the person you sleep beside every night is plotting your downfall? Ayan thought betrayal was about love, but when he uncovered the truth, he realized it was about something far darker. Greed, power, and control. The days that followed turned into a silent war of masks. To the world, nothing had changed. Ayan still held Mira's hand in public, still laughed at her jokes during family dinners, still carried the weight of appearances. But behind his eyes, the storm only grew stronger. Every morning, Sia clung to him before school, asking for bedtime stories in advance, as though sensing something she couldn't explain. Children have a way of feeling tension, even when it's hidden. She would glance between her parents with innocent confusion, not knowing that the love she believed in was already cracked beyond repair. Ayan worked silently, strategically. He knew that if he confronted Mira too soon, she would twist the narrative, play the victim, and perhaps even take Sia away. So he played the role of the oblivious husband, carefully storing away the evidence he collected piece by piece. Late one night, after Mira had gone to bed, Ayan sat in the dim glow of his laptop, headphones in, listening to the recorded call he had captured earlier that day. Mira's voice was clear, smooth, dripping with false affection. "Don't worry, Arjun. Soon it'll all be ours. He doesn't suspect anything. Once the money is transferred, we'll be free." Ayan paused the recording, his jaw clenched. It wasn't just betrayal of love anymore. It was betrayal of everything. His work, his savings, his home. And worst of all, they were planning to use his daughter as leverage, to paint him as an unfit father while they ran away with everything. The thought of Sia being raised in the shadow of such deception burned in him like fire. That was when he made his decision. Revenge wouldn't just be about exposing them. It would be about taking back control, ensuring that Mira and Arjun paid for every lie, every manipulation, every drop of poison they tried to pour into his daughter's future. But revenge needed patience. And patience was something Ayan had mastered. He began small, subtle moves that went unnoticed. He changed the passwords to his bank accounts, shifted money quietly into a private trust under Sia's name, and placed legal safeguards that only he controlled. Mira never noticed. She was too busy living her double life. To her, Ayan was still the loyal, clueless husband. And she wore her mask so well that even Sia didn't suspect anything. At night, she kissed her husband goodnight, then secretly messaged Arjun under the covers. To anyone else, it would have looked like a happy marriage. But Ayan knew the truth. And the more he watched, the more dangerous she became. One evening after dinner, Mira sat beside him on the couch, resting her head on his shoulder like she had countless times before. "You've been so quiet lately," she murmured. "Is everything okay?" Ayan smiled faintly, the perfect mask. "Just work stress." Inside, though, his mind screamed. Her ability to act, to pretend, to look him in the eyes and still lie. This was no ordinary betrayal. This was calculation. Later that night, as Sia slept peacefully in her room, Ayan stood in the hallway, watching his daughter's door. He thought of the promises he had once made when she was born, that he would protect her, guide her, and never let harm come her way. Now, that promise meant destroying the very person who had once been his greatest love. The turning point came a week later. Ayan had hired a private investigator, someone discreet, someone who could dig deeper without leaving traces. And what the investigator uncovered shook him to the core. Mira and Arjun weren't just planning to take his money. They had already forged documents, signed under his name, and were working to move assets overseas. If successful, Ayan would not only lose everything. He would also face charges for crimes he never committed. They weren't just betraying him. They were setting him up to fall. The report landed in Ayan's hands late at night, a thick folder filled with photographs, papers, and damning evidence. He sat alone in the study, flipping through each page. His anger boiling into something sharper, resolve. Mira thought she was playing a clever game. But Ayan now held the winning cards. From that night onward, his role shifted. No longer the passive observer. No longer the heartbroken husband. Now he was the hunter. Every smile he gave Mira was loaded with secrets she couldn't see. Every kiss goodnight was a countdown. Every interaction was part of a trap tightening around her and Arjun, inch by inch. Still, Ayan knew one thing clearly. Revenge wouldn't just be about striking back. It had to be timed perfectly, executed flawlessly, and sealed with finality. Because once the truth came out, there would be no second chances. The storm inside him had grown into a hurricane, silent but unstoppable. And Mira, blinded by her greed, continued to walk straight into it. A mask can only stay on for so long before it slips. As Ayan tightened his net, Mira and Arjun's secrets began to unravel. But what happens when revenge collides with love, and when Sia's innocence is caught in the crossfire? Revenge is cold, calculated, and ruthless. But what happens when innocence stands in the middle of a battlefield? Ayan was ready to destroy Mira and Arjun, but when Sia's future got tangled in the game, every move became more dangerous. The storm within Ayan had reached its peak, but on the outside, his life looked as normal as ever. He still laughed at the dinner table, still told bedtime stories, still kissed Mira goodbye in the mornings. But each smile was a blade, each laugh a deception. Sia, however, was beginning to sense something. Children see beyond words. They feel tension, they notice silences. Her drawings began to change. The colorful houses with 3 smiling stick figures turned into shapes with shadows, faces without smiles. One evening she asked Ayan softly, "Papa, why doesn't Mama smile at you anymore?" Her words pierced deeper than any betrayal. Ayan hugged her tightly, forcing a smile. "Mama's just tired, my princess. Don't worry." But inside he made another vow. Sia will never grow up thinking love is made of lies. Meanwhile, Mira grew bolder. She thought her plan was nearly complete. To her, Ayan remained oblivious, too busy with work, too trusting, too blind. She had no idea that every call she made, every secret meeting with Arjun, was being recorded and filed away by the very man she thought she was fooling. One night, after putting Sia to bed, Ayan watched from the shadows as Mira slipped out, phone pressed to her ear, voice low but trembling with excitement. "It's almost done, Arjun. Just a little longer. The documents will be signed, and then it'll all be ours." Ayan's eyes hardened. She spoke of a life beyond him, beyond their marriage, beyond the home they had built together. But she wasn't just taking him out of the picture. She was rewriting the entire story of their family. It was then Ayan realized the most painful truth of all. Mira didn't just betray him. She erased him. The private investigators' reports only added fuel to the fire. The photographs of Mira laughing in Arjun's arms, the legal documents with forged signatures, the secret bank accounts, all of it painted a picture darker than Ayan had imagined. And yet he kept his silence. Because silence was his greatest weapon. But then, the line between revenge and love blurred when Sia unknowingly stepped into the crossfire. One afternoon, while playing in the garden, she overheard Mira speaking on the phone. Curious, she wandered closer, clutching her doll. She heard words she didn't understand. Money, accounts, leaving soon. But she heard one word clearly. Papa. Later that evening, Sia asked Ayan, Papa, is Mama going to leave us? The question broke him. His little girl, innocent and pure, had sensed the betrayal without even knowing the meaning of betrayal. Ayan hugged her tightly, fighting back tears. No, Sia. No one will ever take you away from me. From that moment on, his revenge was no longer just about justice. It was about protecting Sia's world, her innocence, her belief in love. And that meant his plan had to be flawless. Ayan began setting traps, quietly and carefully. He mirrored Mira's documents, gathering duplicates of everything she and Arjun forged. He contacted lawyers discreetly, ensuring custody rights would fall in his favor. He even aligned allies, trusted friends who would testify to his character when the time came. All the while, Mira remained blind. She continued her double life, thinking she was the predator, never realizing she was walking straight into the hunter's snare. But fate has a way of testing even the strongest plans. One evening, as Ayan returned home, he found Sia sitting alone on the staircase, her doll clutched tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. His heart stopped. He knelt beside her. Sia, what happened? Through her sobs, she whispered. Mama was talking to someone on the phone. She said she doesn't love you anymore. She said, she loves someone else. Ayan froze. The words, spoken by his own daughter's lips, shattered whatever was left of his heart. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as though she might break. He wanted to rage, to scream, to confront Mira that very moment, but he couldn't. Not in front of Sia. Not yet. That night, as Mira slept peacefully beside him, Ayan stared at the ceiling, his mind ablaze. His daughter had heard the truth, had felt the weight of betrayal that should never have touched her innocent world. And that was the final straw. From that moment forward, there was no room for hesitation. The evidence was ready. The plan was in motion. The storm was about to break. And when it did, Mira and Arjun would lose everything. Not just the money, not just the lies, but the very lives they thought they could build on betrayal. Ayan had been patient long enough. The time for silence was ending. Every storm has a breaking point. And when Ayan finally unleashed the truth, it wasn't just betrayal that was exposed. It was destruction. The mask of love would be ripped away, and Mira would face the revenge she never saw coming. Betrayal can be hidden in whispers and shadows, but when the storm finally breaks, there's no hiding from the truth. Ayan had waited, planned, and endured. Now it was time to strike, and once the truth came out, lives would never be the same again. For weeks, Ayan had been a man of silence, watching, waiting, planning. But storms can only be contained for so long before they tear through everything in their path. And the time had come for Ayan to unleash his storm. He began his move with precision. The documents Mira and Arjun had forged were quietly duplicated, authenticated, and filed away under his custody. The bank transfers they had planned were intercepted. Ayan had already moved the money into Sia's trust. Lawyers had been discreetly prepared, ready to pounce at his signal. But the masterstroke was the evidence. Videos, recordings, photographs, receipts, all bound neatly in a file, waiting to expose the truth. The opportunity came sooner than expected. One evening, Mira announced that she wanted to host a family dinner. She called Ayon's parents, Sia's grandparents, and even some close family friends. She wanted the illusion of the perfect family to shine brighter than ever. Perhaps, Ayon thought, it was her way of keeping appearances intact until she was ready to vanish with Arjun. But Ayon had other plans. That night, the table was set with fine dishes, the aroma of food filling the air, laughter echoing from the living room. To anyone watching, it looked like the image of happiness. Mira wore her brightest smile. Sia sat beside her grandparents giggling, and Ayon played the role of the devoted husband with flawless ease. But as the meal ended, and the family settled into conversation, Ayon stood up. His calm voice carried through the room. "There's something I need to share with everyone." The chatter fell silent. Mira looked up at him, confused. "What do you mean?" she asked, her smile faltering slightly. Ayon walked to the cabinet, opened the drawer, and pulled out the file he had prepared. His hands were steady, his eyes locked on hers. "For weeks now," he began, "I've been living with a truth I can no longer keep hidden. Tonight you'll all see it." He placed the file on the table and began spreading out photographs. Pictures of Mira with Arjun at the hotel, printouts of bank transfers, copies of forged signatures. He played a recording of her voice, soft and unmistakable, whispering promises to Arjun. The room fell into stunned silence. Gasps echoed. Sia's grandparents stared in disbelief. And Mira? Her face drained of color, her mask finally slipping. "Ayan, it's not what it looks like," she stammered. But her voice faltered as the evidence piled higher and higher. "Undeniable, undeniable." Ayan's voice was calm, but sharp as a blade. "While you smiled at me while you tucked our daughter into bed, you were plotting to destroy me, to steal everything, to erase me. But you forgot one thing, Mira. I don't lose." Tears filled Mira's eyes, but they were not tears of guilt. They were tears of fear. The perfect image she had built was crumbling before everyone's eyes. Sia, confused and frightened, clung to her grandmother, asking what was happening. Ayon's heart ached at the sight, but he knew this moment was necessary. Sometimes the truth destroys before it heals. Mira tried to rise to protest, but Ayon's next move silenced her completely. He pulled out the final piece of evidence, legal documents already filed for custody of Sia. "You won't take her from me," he said firmly. "You won't poison her life with your lies. She deserves better than this." The room erupted with whispers, shock, and judgment. Mira's parents lowered their heads in shame. Friends exchanged looks of betrayal. And Mira? She stood frozen, her world collapsing around her. But the storm wasn't finished. Because at that very moment the front door opened, and in walked Arjun. He had been foolish enough to come to the house, believing Mira's words that Ayon was weak, blind, and powerless. Instead, he walked straight into the storm. Ayon turned to him, eyes blazing with controlled fury. "Welcome, Arjun. You've been a shadow in my home for too long. Tonight, everyone sees you for who you are." The room grew tense. Arjun stuttered, tried to speak, but the evidence spoke louder than his words. The photographs of him with Mira, the recordings of his voice, it was all laid bare. Mira's betrayal was no longer a secret. It was a spectacle. And Ayon had won the first battle. But revenge wasn't over. This was only the beginning. Because while Mira and Arjun's reputations were shattered, Ayon's true plan reached far deeper. The law would come for them next. Their finances would collapse. Their carefully constructed world would turn into ashes. And Ayon would stand not as the victim but as the survivor, the protector, the man who turned betrayal into strength. But even in victory, One truth weighed heavily on his heart. Sia had seen too much. Her wide, frightened eyes that night haunted him. She was too young to understand betrayal, too innocent to carry such pain. And as Ayan tucked her into bed after the storm, her small hand clutched his tightly. "Papa," she whispered, "you'll never leave me, right?" Ayan kissed her forehead, his voice steady. "Never, Sia. Never." But deep down, he knew the battle wasn't finished. Because revenge may expose the truth, but it also leaves scars. And Mira, humiliated and cornered, would not go down without a fight. The storm had broken, but the war was far from over. When the walls of betrayal collapse, desperation breeds chaos. Mira and Arjun had lost everything, but cornered enemies are the most dangerous. Ayan's final test was not just revenge but survival. And in the end, only one truth would remain: love or destruction. When enemies are cornered, they don't surrender. They strike back harder. Ayan had exposed the truth, but Mira and Arjun weren't finished. The final chapter of betrayal, love, and revenge was about to unfold. And in the end, only one would walk away with everything. After the storm of that night, silence fell over Ayan's home. Silence but not peace. The truth was out. Mira and Arjun had been exposed before family and friends, their reputations shattered, their secrets unveiled. But the war was not over. Humiliation only made them more dangerous, more desperate. And desperate people often make reckless choices. Mira avoided Ayan's eyes in the days that followed. She stayed out of the house as much as she could, sometimes gone for nights. Arjun, equally cornered, tried to push back through threats and intimidation. But Ayan was ready. He had the law, the evidence, and the truth on his side. Still, Sia was caught in the middle. She clung to Ayan tighter than ever, sensing that her world was fragile, that the love she once believed unbreakable was now fractured. She asked fewer questions, but her silence was louder than words. One evening, Ayan returned home to find the house eerily quiet. Sia wasn't in her room. Panic surged through him until he saw a note on the kitchen counter. "If you want to see your daughter again, come alone." The handwriting was Mira's. Ayan's hands shook as he gripped the note. His worst fear realized. Mira, in her desperation, had crossed the line he had prayed she never would. She had dragged Sia into the battlefield. Without wasting a second, Ayan followed the trail. The address scribbled at the bottom led him to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. His heart pounded as he pushed open the rusted doors, the echo of his footsteps filling the hollow space. Inside, Mira stood with Sia clutched by her side. Arjun hovered nearby. His expression twisted with defiance. "You ruined everything," Mira spat, her voice trembling with rage. "You exposed us, destroyed us. But I won't let you take her too. Sia stays with me." Ayan's voice was steady, though his chest burned with fury. "You don't love her, Mira. You love yourself. If you truly cared for Sia, you wouldn't have dragged her into your lies." Sia's frightened eyes darted between them, her small hands gripping her doll tightly. "Papa. Mama, please stop." The sound of her trembling voice broke Ayan's heart, but it also fueled his strength. He stepped forward slowly, his gaze fixed on Mira. "Look at her, Mira. Is this the life you want for her? Fear lies shadows. You betrayed me, you betrayed us, but don't betray her innocence." For a moment Mira's mask cracked. Her eyes flickered with hesitation, a glimmer of the woman she had once been. But Arjun's hand tightened on her shoulder, his voice hissing in her ear. "Don't listen to him. We can still take her. With her, he's powerless." That was his final mistake. Because in that moment, Sia turned her face away from her mother and whispered, "I want to go with Papa." The words shattered Mira. Her grip loosened, her eyes filling with tears, not of love but of loss. For the first time, she realized she had already lost the one thing she could never replace: her daughter's trust. Ion seized the moment. He rushed forward, pulling Sia into his arms, holding her against his chest as though he would never let go again. Arjun lunged forward, but Ion was faster. With one swift move, he pulled out his phone and pressed play. The warehouse echoed with the voices of Betrayal, Mira and Arjun's recorded calls, their laughter, their plans to steal everything. The sound filled the air like a weapon, stripping away whatever illusion they still clung to. Arjun froze, realizing the game was truly over. The police sirens outside confirmed it. Ion had tipped them off before coming, ensuring that even if things went wrong, justice would arrive. Moments later, officers stormed the warehouse, surrounding Arjun and Mira. Arjun fought, but was dragged away in handcuffs. Mira collapsed to her knees, her face streaked with tears as she watched Ion hold Sia tightly, protectively. As the officers escorted her away, she whispered one final plea. "Ion, please, forgive me." But Ion didn't answer. His silence was louder than any words. The days that followed were not easy. Sia struggled to understand, her young mind trying to piece together a world where her mother was gone. Ion did everything he could: bedtime stories, warm embraces, gentle reassurances, to shield her from the pain. Slowly, laughter began to return to their home, though the scars remained. Mira and Arjun faced the consequences of their actions in court. Fraud, forgery, attempted abduction. The charges were heavy, the evidence undeniable. Their greed had destroyed them, just as Ion had planned. But for Ion, revenge wasn't the sweetest victory. It was survival. It was protecting his daughter. It was proving that even when betrayal tries to tear everything apart, love can endure. On a quiet evening weeks later, Ion sat on the balcony with Sia curled up beside him. The sky burned orange with the setting sun. "Papa," she whispered, resting her head against his arm. "Are we safe now?" Ion kissed her hair, his voice soft but firm. "Yes, my princess. We're safe. And no one will ever hurt us again." In that moment, as the storm of betrayal finally faded into memory, Ion realized the truth. Revenge may bring justice, but love is what brings healing. And as long as Sia was by his side, he had already won.